Please subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts, Immigrantly Uninterrupted. You can subscribe for as little as $34.99 for the entire year or $3.99 a month. And yes, you will get ad-free episodes. But honestly, this isn't really about skipping ads. It's about supporting independent media and conversations that don't always have a neat little box to live in. The kind of conversations where we talk about life, identity, culture, dating, relationships, all the messy, but real stuff. So think of it like this. If you've ever listened to an episode of Lovely while you're on a walk, you're in the car, or maybe even after a bad date thinking, okay, wow, I really needed to hear that. This is how you help keep those conversations going. So if Lovely has ever made you feel seen, challenged your thinking, or expanded the narrative around all those things, subscribing is one way you can support the show. If you enjoy the conversations we're having, subscribe to Immigrantly Uninterrupted and help us keep building this on our terms. And once you do, send me a message on Instagram. I'd love to know.
You know you need fiber for a healthy gut, but do you actually know how to get it? Quaker's been serving up fiber since 1877, with over 100 great-tasting, good source of fiber options to choose from. Whether you like old-fashioned oats, instant oatmeal, granola, or oatmeal squares, Quaker makes it delicious. So good. Get your fiber with Quaker. Shop Quaker's good source of fiber products at a store near you.
Hello, and welcome back to Lovely. I'm your host, Mahak, and I'm so glad you're here today. So today's episode might shift your perspective a little, and I've been thinking a lot lately about how fast we form opinions about people we've actually never met, and very confidently, right? Like with zero data, just maybe off of one or two clips that you saw on social media, we quickly form an opinion. And today's episode is kind of about that, right? Because I'm joined by someone you've definitely seen before, whether that's The Bachelor, Perfect Match, or just casually on your For You page.
Clayton Echard is on an epic worldwide journey to find the love of his life.
I'm a Midwest boy from Missouri that just wants to find my person. I can't wait to get married and have kids. And I believe more than anything that my future wife is here.
Bring on the women!
So today I have Clayton Echard. I know some of you already have a take, maybe even a strong one. And I just want you to hold that thought for a second, okay? Because that initial judgment, that instinct, that's actually what we're unpacking today. Beyond all of these reality TV shows and edits and the internet discourse, there is a real person here. And his story touches on things we talk about on this show all the time. Identity, validation, childhood conditioning, and what it actually feels like to not be believed. You may have already heard parts of his story on Love Trapped, the iHeartRadio podcast by Stephanie Young, which does a really good job at laying out the facts. And today we're going to go a little deeper, but also learn more about Clayton, who he was in the beginning, how he kind of evolved and got the role of The Bachelor, how this story unfolded, the impact that it had on him, and then kind of the rebuild, like where is he in his life now? But this episode will be a two-part episode. So today is part one, and this is what you're going to get in part one. What it was like growing up for Clayton in a very specific environment and how that shaped him. How validation and identity led him toward becoming The Bachelor. And the situation that started with a LinkedIn message and turned into one of the most public and complicated legal battles I've personally heard about in a long time. We're talking about the harassment, the competing narratives, and what it feels like to say this isn't true in a world that isn't sure it wants to believe you. So here's part one, and I have a feeling by the end of this, you might see Clayton a little differently than you did 5 minutes ago. Clayton, welcome to Lovely. How are you?
I am great and excited to dive in today to all these discussions, which I have a feeling are going to be a lot different than what I typically talk about on podcast.
Yeah, and I want to hear all of it, but I think just on dancing, I was actually going to ask you like what is keeping you sane these days, and would you say dancing is one of them?
Yeah, to me, like dancing is very healing. It's a way to just get out energy from within. So I talk a lot like about, or I've learned about addressing issues, not just suppressing them. I was raised in an environment where it's like men, they don't cry, they don't show emotion, so you bottle everything up, and that's what real like strength is for a man, is to how much trauma he can hold within, and so that doesn't work. Eventually it just keeps bubbling up, and then you eventually have an outburst. And so for me, now I've been looking for ways to be able to get out a lot of that tension, and dance is one of them. It's movement therapy. I never really thought that it would be that. But when you get your body moving, my hip hop instructor, she was like a therapist to me. So we would be like dancing, and all of a sudden I just have all this stuff coming up and I just start, letting it all out. And so there were times where we were talking more than even dancing. But it seemed like dancing was a way for me to like be very vulnerable, and someone's watching you and you're like, okay, I can be all fully vulnerable with you and you're not judging me. It almost gives you permission to like then release more than just the dance itself. So it's surprisingly therapeutic to dance.
It is really therapeutic, and I think it gives you instant levels of serotonin. And I also appreciate, you being a public figure, kind of rejecting those years of conditioning that like just because you're a man or you're not allowed to do that. And I kind of want to get into a little bit more of your background. So you were mentioning you grew up having these, I guess, expectations placed on you that you're supposed to act a certain way, you're supposed to be a certain way. And one thing that I like to ask all my guests is, how did you grow up? And I guess what is your connection to immigrant identity that has shaped you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, in a nutshell, I grew up in conservative white America in the middle of Missouri. And that culture, there's a lot of everybody is the same, right? So, all I really knew was there was just a bunch of white people. And then we had some kids from the inner city St. Louis that were bused into our school. But outside of that, like I really had at the time of my life, I was ignorant thinking like this is what most of America looked like. We didn't have a ton of money, so we didn't travel a lot. So I didn't like ever see other states, or like I was never a part of other cultures. It was just conservative American culture, right? So that was my life for like 28 years. And then all of a sudden, I go on, well, even before reality television, when I was able to walk on at the University of Missouri, and play football, Division One football. And that was the first time in which I was in an environment where I was actually the minority, because I'd say probably 65, 70% of my teammates were Black. And so because of that, like all of a sudden now, without realizing it, I was a minority in that environment. And I started becoming entrenched in the culture. It's like in the locker room, it was always rap music playing, and the guys were freestyle rapping and they were dancing. And, I loved it. It was like, this is awesome. This is expressive. That was kind of my first taste of being in a position where I was a minority, and I was welcomed in. And the more that I dived into the culture, the more I was accepted. It was like, hey, this guy's really trying, and we can appreciate that. So then, from that, I went on reality television, and then I started traveling around the world, around the country, and I spent some time in LA, back and forth, and that's a very more like diverse area. You have a lot of different cultures within that city. And so I started getting exposed to all of this. And I remember just at various points in my life, like I go to church. And, again, if you grew up in conservative white America and you went to church, like the pastor preaches and everybody else sits there in silence.
Were you religious though?
I was raised Christian. Yeah, I was raised Lutheran specifically. And it was basically like, that's the way. Like everybody in my town, it's like everyone believes in God, or seemingly everybody does. So
Do you still have that strong faith?
I still am very, very spiritual. I believe in God. I just don't follow organized religion at this point. I think I have the strongest relationship I've ever had with God. I just don't conform to like a specific religion. So going back to like to the church, like I have one of my best friends is his name's Clarence, and I met him when I played football. And him and I are completely different. You know, he's a black man from Texas, like I'm a white man from Missouri. I went to his church one day, and they're like, "Come on now, pastor," and I'm like, "Whoa, who's yelling? Why are we yelling?" And they're like, "Come on, preach." And I was like, "What is this? Like, what? Why is everybody like saying stuff while the pastor is preaching?" But I liked it. I was like, "Oh, this is expressive," and so it was just a culture shock to me. Ever since that point, I'm like, "Man, I love this." Like, I really feel like what I grew up with, and it was very, like, kind of like suppress, like, don't be too expressive, like, kinda keep to yourself, be calm, like, don't draw attention. So, I say all this to say, like, now I'm in a position where I'm diving into all these different cultures, and you mentioned, you know, with immigrant, like, how that has shaped me. For me now, it's like I am diving into cultures that are very, very different from me. I first jumped into hip hop dancing. All right. So, like a white man jumping into hip hop dancing, it's like the exact opposite part of the spectrum. But I loved also the culture around it. And so after 3 years, I decided I want to jump to salsa. So I just started salsa dancing. And again, like I walk in there, it's not a ton of white dudes. And you're just like, yeah, I'm not in this culture, but I can be a part of it. No one's saying I can't. So I've just been really grateful now because of how accepting other cultures are, and that's what's really been awesome is like I'm now taking bits and pieces and saying like where do I land? Like what does it look like for me? Like what will be my culture going forward? It'll be a bit of this, bit of this, and a bit of this.
Thanks for sharing your journey. And I think you have paused and kind of reflected around like, this is where I came from. This is what I started diving into. This is actually what I like. And I think the good part, which I'm happy about, is a lot of times when you step into new culture, people might not be that accepting, right? But it seems like you got a positive reaction. So I'm really curious, how do you go from being super religious, being into sports, and kind of like what made you want to join The Bachelor and go on reality TV? Like, how did that transition happen? And were you single for a very long time before you went on The Bachelor? Like, I want to know a little bit of your dating history.
I'd have to take you first back to seventh grade to really draw this story together so you understand how I came to become the bachelor because it starts in seventh grade. So and seventh grade is when I first started like being aware of what I was. And that was at the point where I was like, what do I want to be? You know, who, like, am I enough as a human being? Like, those are when these thoughts started popping up. And at that point in your life, you know, when you're in seventh grade, a lot of your value comes from like your friends, your peers, like if you're accepted by them, and then like your sports, if you're a good athlete or not. Like, there's really not any other metric, or this, at least not for me, there wasn't. I didn't really care if I got good grades or not. It was just like, hey, like, do my friends like me? Do girls like me? And, you know, am I a good athlete? And the answer to all those things was like I had friends, but I was like the girls didn't like me. They friend zoned me. They called me Big Brother.
Why do you think they friend zoned you? What do you think you were doing that made them do that?
I I I was in a Lutheran school and up until sixth grade, and then seventh grade I went to a public school. I go to public school and I hormones haven't hit at this point, so I'm not looking to like be intimate with women. I'm just like, oh, I want to like be friends with all the hot girls, right? So I'm friends with them. So the girls all, I mean, I'm the new guy in school, and all of a sudden all the girls are like me. Meanwhile, a lot of these guys are envious. They're like, who's this new dude? So all of a sudden now I have to fight a few guys because they're like they're envious and mad at me getting the attention. But I end up like becoming really good friends with the girls, right? I'm seventh grade. I'm just like, hey, if I'm in the same room as them, like then that's all I want, right? I'm not trying to kiss them. I'm not trying to like do anything with them. And so I basically just got in close with these girls and friend zoned myself. Like, but I also like as I grew into myself into high school, I didn't have confidence. And to this day, I mean, the single greatest thing that has made me more attractive is confidence. So probably didn't have confidence up until, I don't know, a year ago. So I would fake it till I made it. And it's like women can feel that. And like I think there's nothing, in my opinion, more unattractive to a woman than a man that like doesn't believe in himself and doesn't have confidence. It's like, look, you can be whatever you want. Is if you're confident, if you're wearing a goofy hat or a goofy outfit and a girl's like, oh, that looks stupid, but she sees you just not caring, you're like, I don't care what you think. Like, this is me. Like, I just think that confidence is like, it was the missing piece for me. So it was just like, hey, this guy's not confident in himself. I was trying too hard with women. Like, I thought I had to make them laugh with everything I said. So I was like trying to make jokes like every single sentence. And it was just like, I was a tryhard. That I think really hurt me and is why I was friend zoned. Well, meanwhile, I wasn't a good athlete. So I was like, okay, I need to become a better athlete. And if I become a bigger, stronger, better athlete, like the girls, like the athletes, like in high school, they love their athletes. makes you popular too to be an athlete. So I'm like, all right, I got to just become the athlete, the best athlete. So I just went on a mission and I ended up, basically making it to the NFL with that approach. Every day I was like, I'm going to be the best version ever. So once I make it to the highest level, like I'll be seen as enough. And then I was like, also women will like me too. Cause like the more like the higher I climb, like the more status I have and, and so they'll like me as well. So I did that, but I got to that level with the NFL and I was just like, I don't even want to be here. I was like, I don't want to be here. Like this was never my passion. I just did it so I could just basically validate myself in the eyes of everybody else. Well, I also realized that like a lot of women don't care about athletes. They're like, I don't care if you're a good athlete. And I got cut from the NFL. So I basically that my career ended. So then I went into medical sales and I was like, all right, I was in medical sales for a bit. And then I got reached out to for The Bachelorette. So that was the first show. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not happy in this job that I'm doing. And I can go on the show, which all these women across the world watch. Like it's a popular show. So if I go on this show, like I'll be seen by all these women and I could probably find somebody to settle down. So I go on The Bachelorette. Well, then they end up making me The Bachelor, like from that experience. And that was when I was like, oh, now I'm going to be the most sought after man in America. Like this is a role that like very few men ever get. So this is finally the point at which I'm no longer the big brother. Like I'm the most sought after in America. So it was my ego. Basically, how the answer is how did I get to the place, to become The Bachelor? It was my ego that was basically seeking external validation and trying to prove my worth. That like that's my insecurity of not feeling good enough drove me every day to stack up accomplishments. So that on paper, when The Bachelor called, they were like, on paper, I had everything. I stacked up all of these accolades and accomplishments. So I fit the part. It was like, okay, he's a 6'5" white dude that, like our primary demographic is white women. So like this is what they want, this kind of guy that has, he makes six figures. He was a former athlete and takes care of himself. And it's like, I checked all the boxes. And so, yeah, I went on The Bachelor for validation.
I think it's really healthy to hear you admit all the mental gymnastics that were happening in your mind. And I think it would give some insight into men listening in on this too. Because again, as you said, for women, confidence, like seeing confidence in a man doesn't have to be like super alpha or performative, right? We need to be able to see, who you are, and you're comfortable with who you are. And I guess that journey of like seeking validation, you were doing things for the wrong reasons. And I feel like you recognize this now, which is why you think you've only gained confidence in the last year because you're probably making decisions that are authentic to you and you're trying to only get your own validation.
For me, I think it's important that people they connect the dots because we all have stuff from our past that we don't realize like is impacting us. And it's why we act the way we do today as adults. So I've went through a lot of therapy and I've started connecting those dots and just becoming more mindful of like seventh grade Clayton is impacting 32-year-old Clayton for these reasons, right? So I think we all have this, and like if all of us can go back and see like where this all started, because it did start from somewhere. It's like you didn't just become something for no reason. You became something because of your upbringing.
I wanted to learn a little bit more about you. So people that are probably hearing about, the traumatic series of events that have transpired in your life, like they can make sense of it, right? Because you went through a very public journey of being on The Bachelor and a lot of people had opinions. And I think you can also like sit here and admit that some of the comments that people were making about not liking the things that you did, you would probably feel, okay, right, justified. I did make some mistakes, right? But at the end of the day, we've gone through the fact that you are human and humans make mistakes. And now you're doing things to be better at it. But what I want to move forward to is we obviously need to talk about the Love Trapped podcast hosted by journalist Stephanie Young. For anyone who isn't familiar with the case, here is a quick highlight reel of what happened. Clayton received a LinkedIn connection request and a message from someone he didn't know. And then they agreed to meet in person. There was intimacy involved, but he was clear afterwards that he didn't want to pursue anything further. And that's when things escalated. He was told by her, Laura Owens, that she is pregnant. Not just pregnant with twins. Clayton denied it, because based on what he knew actually happened that night, they didn't have intercourse. It was not possible. And from there, it turned into a years long situation, harassment, public accusations, competing narratives, and eventually a legal battle. The case ultimately concluded with the court confirming what Clayton had been saying from the beginning, that he was not the father. But by the time that happened, the damage had already been done. We're talking reputation, relationships, mental health, all of it. So I want to start here with you, Clayton. How accurately did Love Trapped capture your side of the story?
As close to 100%. I believe it actually, they've captured it completely. And that was a discussion that we had early on. I said, guys, look, I don't want you to put me on a pedestal. Like, I want you to show me as I am. I'm not a saint. I am a sinner. I'm somewhere in the middle. So, like, just show that. Okay. I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to tell you all of why I did what I did. I'm going to tell you where I messed up. I'm going to tell you, like, where I think I actually handled myself well. And then, like, just share that. And I believe that's why it's doing so well right now, is because I think people are just starving for authenticity, especially in a social media environment where everyone's faking AI now and people are faking, what they have. It's like, look at me with all this stuff, but it's a facade. It's like, you don't actually have that car. It's rented. You actually aren't happy all the time, even though you present as such on social media. And there's just so much fakeness out there. And that's something that I push back hard against. I'm like, I'm going to live my life as authentic as possible. Also the other part of it is Love Trapped has multiple other victims. And so I just had this conversation 2 days ago with the producer, Stephanie. I said, look, what I love about this is, like, it's become way bigger than me. And there's multiple victims and we all are a bit different. The big push was like, hey guys, if you're going to do this, let's keep it as close to the source. Like, the good and the bad, show it all. And that's what they've done.
Yeah, I think the lines of reality are quite blurry. And I think we saw a really strong example of that here. So I guess curious to know, while this was happening, I think it was 2023, after receiving all of the texts of these allegations that were being made towards you and the harassment, did you at a point think like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it? Like, I need to disengage from it because I know it's not true. What was going on in your mind at that time, and what kind of made you kept going back and asking for evidence and all of that?
Well, no, I definitely did try to just ignore her. I blocked her, but she ended up sending me text messages from 13 different phone numbers. So whenever I'd block her from one, she'd just send another message from a different phone number. And she was using Google Voice. It's an app, so she could just keep generating new phone numbers. So I couldn't avoid her. I tried to. She then started, emailing me from like 3 different accounts. I blocked those. And then, so again, as I kept blocking her, she then started going after my family. So she found their emails. Then she found my workplace email address, started emailing my employer. And so she was just like, if you're not going to answer to me, then I'm going to basically involve everybody around you. So at that point, and she's pulling everybody else in around me. Well, it's like, now I have to address this, right? Because now they're all asking me questions. And so I'm like, look, I guess I can't ignore this woman. I'm going to have to talk directly with her. And I'd rather talk directly with her, because I don't want everybody in my life being involved in this, because they're just hearing whatever she's telling them. And so now they're going to be like, okay, well, hearing her side of the story, like, maybe he is guilty. So I realized very quickly, I'm like, I have to respond to her. Otherwise, like, she's going to continue to go to people around me, my support system. And then I'm going to be talking every day to like a different person, trying to explain to them why she's making it up, as opposed to just going directly at her. So that way she doesn't go after everybody on the periphery, which she still did anyways. But I definitely tried to avoid her at first and block her and just move on. And she just would not allow that.
When I first heard the story and then I was listening to the podcast, I think there's a big cultural aspect to this as well, right? And I want to ask this carefully, because we live in a time where it's really important to support people who come forward, right? Especially around domestic violence, harassment, and abuse post Me Too movement. We should always, highly consider when victims are coming forward, right? And usually that side of the story, we want to make sure that, if a woman is coming forward, we're making sure that we're believing her. But I think these types of situations are not very black and white. And with your experience, like I said, a woman came forward. She said, this happened to me unjustly. And then, later on, it was proved that with all the evidence in place, that was not the reality. So, how do you balance that in an environment where we're constantly going to conform this bias of believing one side, but we need to look at the full picture?
All I realize I can focus on is just speaking my truth and focusing in on that. And then as the story develops, as attention is drawn onto me, it's like, hey, this isn't my job to try to convince people out of a movement. Me too. Like I completely understand, why it was created. It's like we need to, encourage women to come forward. A lot of women are fearful when they keep to themselves and they don't share their truths. And it's like, no, we want you to share your truths. And certainly when I all of a sudden then come to the scene as a white man, it's like, okay, well, no, this doesn't fit the narrative because like now it's a woman's word versus a man's word. And I found out very quickly, like I don't look like your usual victim. It's like I realized I was up against that, and I saw that online. People like, oh, he'll be fine, even if this is like all true. Like he'll be fine. He's a white man. He'll be fine. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like now you're invalidating me because like I still have feelings. Like I can still go through this, and me being a white man doesn't make this easier. Like this, and if you're not going to validate me or hear me, like it actually makes it worse because it's like, hey, go deal with your stuff. We don't care. So I was getting a lot of that feedback online. And, it was important for me to just to focus in on, hey, just keep pushing out your truth and then let this start to unwind where people go, okay, look, we should believe victims. That's it. Like, it's not a matter of believing a man or a woman. It's believing the victims. And victims can come in all different shapes and sizes. And so, like, the important thing is that we need to hear both sides of the story before we cast judgment and not just jump on one side because it's like, okay, me too. We're supposed to believe all women. It's like, that's just ignorant to just jump on one side right away and go, okay, we believe all women. It's like, because women make mistakes in the same way that men do. Like it's there's just as many bad men as there are bad women in my belief. And so because of that, it's like, guys, what this should show us is like, let's believe the victims. And I had people that when I started sharing my narrative, they're like, oh, he's anti-woman. He's a misogynist. And I was like, no, no. So all of a sudden they're like, he's trying to have a reverse Me Too movement. I'm like, I've never said that. I've never once went after women and said like, we need to stop believing women. I've never mentioned that. I'm like, guys, I'm just a victim here. And this is a case where I don't look like your typical victim, but I am one. So how we come to this place is by not judging me on whether or not I'm a victim by the way that I look, but judging me based on the information that is presented. But that requires patience. And that's where, again, I think society nowadays, like people aren't patient. They just read a headline and they're like, he's guilty. And that's what happened. When this first came out, I was proven guilty or I was guilty until proven innocent. Like I had everybody online seemingly attacking me. And they're like, yep, this is the asshole guy that we knew on The Bachelor. Like he's a terrible dude. He's a douchebag. Like, so this tracks. And so I had to basically prove to everybody my innocence. And was that unfair? Of course. Yes, it was in my eyes. But that being said, it was just like, this is what it is. Like there was a movement, that like maybe recently, like kind of caused an overcorrection. And it's like, that's fine. Like that's typically how things happen. Movements sway heavily into one side and then there's a correction phase. And I think that's maybe where we're at, where it's like, all right, like we should still believe many women, but understand that we can't believe all in the same way that we can't believe all men, because like there's always going to be the exceptions, right? In this case, Laura was an exception. She's a liar. She's, one of the women that is not telling the truth. And so it's just a story of like, hey, let's like just wait until the facts come out. So how I handled that was I was just like, let me just keep speaking my truth. And I'm not going to make this about a bigger thing. I'll just let like the environment start to unpack this as to why people didn't believe me. And that's what started happening. People around me started saying, well, this wasn't fair. Like, why didn't people believe him in the first place? And so then that's where the bigger picture started to unravel and it just became a natural discussion.
I just want to reiterate the fact that I don't ever think we should make it harder for real victims to come forward, and it shouldn't be the narrative of just believe women, but actually believe victims, right? And I also think this story or this case and this experience that you've gone through also helps people realize that you cannot just blindly accept everything without any level of scrutiny, right? Like you have to ask the right questions, you have to get the evidence. And I think your case kind of forces that conversation. I know you mentioned something around there are as many bad women as many bad men. I don't necessarily think I agree with that because the numbers are kind of there to prove that. But what I will say, and I'm not justifying anyone that didn't believe you, but you also have to take into account everything that is going on in the world right now with like recent things of the Rape Academy, like the 62 million men going on a site and, talking about drugging their wives and raping them. So what I'm saying is, I think the conversation needs to shift to believe real victims and actually ask the right questions. But you can also understand why there is such an innate reaction to when your case presents itself to being like, oh yeah, like it maybe she is right. You know what I mean? And maybe this is one of the reasons why she probably went after you because she knew that you weren't extremely liked after your season of The Bachelor. And maybe you were an easy target, but I'm glad that you were proven innocent because that's who you were. I guess my next question to you would be the word victim feels heavy, right? Was it difficult for you to like see yourself in that way? And like, I guess moving forward in life, like as you continue to see your friends, your loved ones, and even as you like date now, is that a version of your identity that you hold on to? How are you dealing with that?
No, I mean, it's a great question. So, like, I actually saw myself as the victim most of my life, like, and in a detrimental way. Like, growing up, as I didn't feel like I was good enough, my ego portrayed me as the victim in my own head. Like, oh, life's not fair. Like, the nice guy getting friend zoned, and like these girls just can't see me for what I really am, and they're going after these douchebags, and I'm a good dude, but yet here I am, like not being sought after, and oh, like my coaches, they just don't. It's like I'm more talented than these guys, but they let they're those guys are their favorites, so they're putting them in the starting role besides me, and so this victim mindset is something that I carried for most of my life where I'm like, life's not fair. And, I just feel like at every turn, I'm just basically the value that I believe I have, like people aren't seeing. But the reality was, is like, I didn't see value in myself. So I was just receiving the energy that I was putting out. It's like, hey, I don't see myself. I don't have high value. So that's what the universe was sending back my way. So I had a victim mindset most of my life. And when, this came around, it was like, okay, yeah, I kind of grapple with it because I've ditched that victim mindset since. I believe that life is unfair. I believe that there are people that will have it better than us, and we are born into a position where we're like, oh, I mean, it could be better. Like it's kind of if I had their resources, I'd be more successful. And it's like, all right, but you don't. So what are you going to do about it? And it used to be, I'm going to complain, I'm going to whine, and I'm going to wait for somebody to come, hand me a golden silver spoon or whatever and save me from pull me out of the pit that I'm in. And it's like nobody's coming. Like nobody's coming to save you. So I eventually got to a place where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of playing victim. I'm going to like go chase after everything I want in life. And I'm my own hero. I'm the person who pulls me out of this victim mindset. I no longer see myself as a victim. I just see myself as like a fighter that goes through life. When this presented, I was like, okay, this is what a real victim is. Like, this is what, like, when you can actually sit here and say, okay, yes, I'm a victim. But again, I'm not looking for you all to like hand me anything or give me validation. I just now, truthfully, I am the one that's being wronged and I deserve, you know, hopefully retribution in some respect, and for me, like, what does that look like? It's like, well, I want her to go to prison, or be held accountable at the very least, because she's wasted my time, she's wasted my money. And so again, I think that's where like victims in the right cases, it's like, yes, you should be given or rewarded, stuff for what's been taken from you. It was a weird thing at first to accept. I was like, guys, I don't want to be seen as the victim because like I saw myself that way my entire life. But in this case, I was like, this actually, you are the victim and you can claim this. It's okay. It doesn't make you weak.
That was really mature. Like your definition of victim changed, and then now you are actually just doing the things that you want to do and staying authentic to yourself, like you said earlier. And I think a lot of people online are seeing that, right? I mean, you have a strong community behind you, and I think so many people believe your story, and as they should. I'm not sure if you've seen the subreddit Justice for Clayton. Have you ever heard about it, or have you read about it?
I'm a little like nerd at heart. I used to play video games growing up. I still do. I have a Nintendo 64 I just bought recently to like honor my younger self. So I was a Redditor well before. So when Justice for Clayton popped up, I mean, I got told about it. And I went in there and yeah, I check in on it. Like I see like what's being said, and it's cool. It's a pretty welcoming and supportive community.
Yeah, is there anything that you saw in there that really stuck with you?
I think the biggest takeaway that I've seen from the Justice for Clayton community is just how strong and positive this community has become. It's all been formed around really not. It's not just me. It's formed around people that want to see justice be had. And Laura has really pressed on a lot of trigger points because she has falsely claimed that she's experienced things like rape and domestic abuse and a miscarriage and cancer. Like she's made up all these lies and she's triggered people that actually have went through those things. And so then they come into this community and they're like, hey, I actually was raped. And so this pisses me off that like she is claiming this. So basically she's playing on heavy emotions, anger, right? So she's pulling people in with these strong emotions and then everyone's unifying in this community. And I really think like this is where I don't know this, but I'm like, I feel that I've always been very accepting and welcoming and open. And so I feel like that's kind of the audience that I've collected now. I think I have a very positive audience. If you look on my page when I post videos, like there's a lot of positivity in the comments. It's like, I don't pull in a negative audience because that's not what I put out. And so I think the biggest takeaway for me is like seeing this positive, supportive community that's grown to well beyond me. Something that I thought was actually really cool was last year when I won in court and it got referred to the county attorney for prosecution to put Laura, basically in front of a judge for her crimes. There was like an after party at the courthouse. So it's like 60 people showed up. It was a lot like, across the country. And I was like, wow, I can't believe people are showing up. And we go to this house party afterwards. And I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm probably gonna be taking a lot of pictures. There'll be a lot of fans there. And so like, but this is the community that I have and this is awesome. No, I went there and it was like I was just another person at the party. Like, and it because it threw me off. I was like, nobody cares that I'm the bachelor. Everyone's just like, hey, this is a bigger thing than him, right? And so it was actually like at first it threw me off, but then I'm like, wait, I actually love this because they're all just like, oh, hey, Clayton. And they're all just meanwhile like making friends with these people that are like, oh my gosh, you're so and so username. Like, oh my gosh, like I love you and da da da. And they're just like forming all these friendships. So that's been the greatest thing that I've taken away from it is just like this has become so much bigger than me. Now I have a responsibility to, basically continue to push out what I'm pushing out to hopefully like unify people to a greater degree as this story continues to develop and get in more people. Like the goal would just to be like to bring in a community of people that like see everybody for what they are and just respect and honor it and just like not be so aggressive. I mean, there's some Reddits you go on where they're just so toxic. And I'm like, we really don't have that. You go on Justice for Clayton, like go find a negative post. You just likely won't find one.
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad that, in this time where probably nothing was making sense and you were being forced to almost like gaslit yourself just with all the things that were coming out, you had this community that was, actually looking at the facts and thinking critically rather than just believing something blindly. And I think the other part of this conversation, which is the feelings and emotions that I was feeling, I get really outraged when I see such life changing claims being made and they're not true. Because then when this is actually happening to people, like you said, that we're mentioning on Reddit, like it takes all credibility away from that. Okay, before we wrap up part one, I went on Reddit because there is a whole community which is called Justice for Clayton. So there's questions on the Reddit thread that I want to directly ask Clayton. So we're going to do a quick rapid fire. First and foremost, this is more lighthearted. What are your thoughts on the Love Trapped theme song? People love it. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I didn't think that they were going to come up with a song. So when I first heard it, I was like, this is eerie. And this encapsulates very well like what Laura is. She has this very just tense and uncomfortable energy. And I think that song really does a good job of capturing that.
Try to leave.
Do you have a favorite fan theory?
A theory. Well, it's kind of hard. I'm like in my head, I know the truth because I know at this point, it's my story and I know like all the inside information. I'm trying to think like what's a theory. I really feel like again, there's not really any secrets. Like everything has been released. There's a theory of who the accomplice is. That's a big one. Like she has an accomplice. The county attorney has listed that she has one that it doesn't say who it is. So there's a discussion if it's her sister or her mother. It's her mother 100%, but I don't know if the county attorney basically is basing the accomplice off of the fact that her sister provided her with her ultrasound to let Laura use it to pass as her own. So from an evidence standpoint, it might be that her sister is the accomplice, but from an actuality standpoint, like who's the one that's helping her day in and day out, it's her mother.
And just for people that are maybe not familiar with what her mom could have done, what did she contribute to this that's making you say it's 100% her?
With an accumulation of evidence, like from talking to people that have grown up around their family to having a phone call with her mother, and just all this mountain of evidence like that I've accrued between talking with people. Her mother, I believe, is the puppet master. So essentially, I believe her mother has brainwashed Laura into believing that this is okay to do. I believe that her mother has an intense hate for men, and she's instilled that upon Laura. And that is what, Laura now thinks that she's doing right by basically, holding men accountable that don't want to be with her. So when she's wronged, she's like, okay, I'm going to make you feel as poorly about yourself as I do because she lacks self-love. So it stems from her mother, from everything that I've heard from people close to them. And I've talked to her mother and it was very apparent that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Wow. And lastly, I think you kind of alluded to this, but what is the outcome that you want from this, like in terms of the consequences that she will face?
Yeah, I want her to go to prison because of this reason, the biggest reason. She's going to do it again if she's not held accountable. Her ties with her mother need to be severed. So she's on house arrest or probation. Like that's not going to take her away from her mother. So I'm like, then you need to take her electronics. You need to cut off the tie with her mother. And I think at that point, she'll snap out of it when she realizes her mother's not in prison with her. Like, it's like, even though her mom was right there alongside her, helping her along the way, when she realizes her mother isn't willing to basically ride or die with her, she's like, oh, sorry, like you go to prison now. That's on you. I think that's when Laura will wake up. And so I'm like, if just put her in prison for a year, whatever. I mean, 5, I don't care how long. It's like, just sever that connection. Otherwise, like Laura's already tried to go back on dating apps. Not even tried. She has. She's went on dating apps even while being under investigation. So she is not stopping. She will continue, and she's taken me and other men to the brink of like very dark places. I've had suicidal ideation, and so with that, it's like it's only a matter of time before she gets to a guy that goes through with it, and that's where like I'm really, really like pushing or hoping that the court system holds her accountable because the court system really doesn't hold people accountable for mental health or for mental damage, like damage caused psychologically, but they'll hold people accountable when it's physical. Yeah. If you kill somebody or if you stab them, like you're going to get held accountable. But when it comes to mental health, they're like, oh, but they're like, she didn't actually hurt you. And it's like, yes, she did. She did. And like, if I killed myself, then what? Like because I got close, but I didn't, it's like, you're not taking it seriously now. And I saw that along the way. I had a police officer's like, well, we can't arrest her because she didn't harm you. And I'm like, she has harmed me. Like, you guys aren't taking this seriously enough. So yeah, I do feel like she needs to be like, spend some time behind bars. And if she gets a slap on the wrist, it's a greater discussion of like, what do I do from here? Do I go advocate for victims' rights, and fight to like get the court system resolved? Because to be honest with you, it's a 3.5-year process in court. It's already like shown me I'm not a fan of the court. I think the courts need to be overhauled. The way that they currently operate is, so it's a money suck that I think is that way by design. I don't think people should spend 3.5 years going to court for something that could have been basically shut down within 3 months.
Okay, that's it for part 1. And honestly, we could have kept going. I mean, we did keep going, but that's in part 2. But just recapping part 1 conversation, what really stuck with me is how much of Clayton's story isn't just his. It's the kid who didn't feel like he was enough. It was the adult who kept achieving, hoping it would finally feel like enough. And then the moment where all of that gets stripped away and you're left figuring out who you are without the titles, without the validation, without the noise. And, I feel like that experience is universal. So I'm sure some of you maybe resonated with Clayton's story, and we've already recorded part 2. I'm not even being dramatic where I'm like, you're going to want to tune in next week to hear how things get really interesting. And then also, we leave the courtroom behind and we get into the rebuild. And then we also talk about where Clayton's at with dating now and what he's actually looking for. We get into his radical honesty about his 1 in a billion fish theory. And I think it really turns into a beautiful conversation around self-awareness and male validation that I think is really healthy. Part 2 drops next week, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Leave a review, send me a DM, share this with someone if it made you think differently about something or someone. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week for more Lovely. Lovely is an Immigrantly media production, produced by Sadia Khan and Shay Yu. Episodes written by me, Mahek. Theme music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Additional music by Epidemic Sound. See you next week on More Lovely.